Okay, so again, one of the things I think is so important is layering. If I taught you everything that there was to know about this post-training stance, you would tune out 5 minutes into it if you haven't tuned out already. And you'd be overwhelmed and you'd be confused and you'd be trying to remember. And, statistically, you'd remember maybe like the first 3 to 5 minutes of what I said, and then everything else would be out the window. Nobody remembers too far ahead if there's too many steps, especially if they're new to something. So we start with the basic structure. Okay, so that basic structure is my feet are about shoulder width apart. Okay, my feet are spread out, my knees are bent, my pelvis is tilted forward, which means my buttocks are tucked in. Okay, which means my thighs have the brunt of the weight. I can test this. Okay, in my intermediate area, my torso, my belly is relaxed. Okay, I'm not sucking my gut in, I'm not pushing it out, I'm just letting it hang. Okay, my shoulders are relaxed, they're a bit rounded, so there's a bit of a concavity in my chest. Okay, we just talked about arches, so there's a bit of an arch going this way. Okay, my arms, another point too, my arms are not out above the natural range that they can go. So I'm not trying to do this. Okay, my arms are level. So for me, this is about the same level as my sternum right here. Okay, my elbows are heavy. Okay, so they're not winged out. Okay, and again, that's part of my structure. Okay, my structure is to absorb. I'm like the umbrella. Okay, and I've got this little space right here, almost like I'm holding two ping pong balls. Okay, and that's just to give me a little give. Okay, I don't want my structure to collapse. I want my structure to be solid, like the dome. Okay. So again, that's the basic structure. If you do this, will you get something out of it? Sure. You'll build up your leg strength, okay? If you just do this without knowing why. Yes, you'll build up leg strength, okay? You'll start to feel your weight in your heels and more spread out over your feet. You'll be paying more attention to how that works, okay? You'll start to fatigue a little bit in the arms after a while, and you'll start to fall into this position naturally because you won't have the muscle strength to hold it up. Okay, so you'll start to learn what that relaxed feeling is like. Okay, that feeling of using the bare amount of muscle to hold ourselves up and to really be using the bones and the tendons and the wire structure underneath. Okay, so all these things will happen anyway, but when we instill the values, when we instill the principles like the domes, okay, or the spheres, all right, then we add more of an impact to it. Okay. So the next piece of the puzzle, this is a homemade pendulum. This is a piece of twine, and this is a little carabiner, okay? So the reason I'm showing you this is because I want to demonstrate the point that no matter where I bring this, okay, whether I bring it up, whether I bring it down, whether I bring it into a circle, okay, the end result is this weighted part is always going to go towards the center of the earth, okay? So if we pan out, all right, and take a look at the whole globe, okay, and all of us standing on it, this thing is still going to point out, no matter what scale it's at, it's still going to point towards the center of the ground, okay? So even if it starts up here, it's going to come. Even if it swings a little bit, those swings are slowly going to slow down, okay? And eventually, this is just going to lie right in front, right on top of that center of the earth, okay? If I were to let it go, it's still going to come even closer. If I were to drop it all together, it's going to rest on the floor. Okay, if that mat weren't there, it would go even lower. If the basement subfloor weren't there, it would go even lower, all the way to the center of the earth. Okay, the idea of that sphere, at the very center of it, is that dense quality that pulls everything down. That's gravity. Okay, so if you can think of your body the same way as this pendulum. Okay, so again, I swing this thing no matter what, no matter where I swing it from, okay, it's always going to return. Okay, the force of gravity is slowly going to pull this thing down, down, down. Okay, now a great exercise to do, and I would do it with something heavier. I don't know what exactly you could use, but whatever you want to find. If you were to attach this to your belt loop, for example, okay, oops. Or, a button somewhere. Okay. I'm going for my belt loop here. I don't know how this is going to work. But the idea is, of course, you guys want to see me tuck a pendulum into my belt. Naturally, I would expect nothing less. So anyway, having a little difficulty here. But my point is, even if you hold it like this, okay, and you walk, again, the heavier the weight is, the more this will teach you. Okay, I don't want this to swing so it's banging into my knees, okay? I just want this pointed at the ground, okay? And I just want to walk, and as I walk, I want to feel my body like the pendulum. I want to feel that ball, that little invisible ball at the center of my pelvic bowl. I want to feel it start to pull down, okay? This is a great exercise to really understand your center of gravity. I always joke with the Tai Chi students, there's a lot of drunken styles are imitated very frequently in Kung Fu. And they're based on this, you know, the idea of the drunken stagger, right? But there's actually a lot of musculature, there's actually a lot of physical fitness that's involved. To be able to act drunk like that, you need to have a great command over your body. But, excuse me, if you've ever been out in Boston or Providence, whatever, in the summertime, and you've seen drunk people out, you'll notice that kind of top-heavy quality, right? There's those kind of shuffle steps, right? That staggering, and again, that's that bowl. Right? This is that bowl trying to make sense of how it moves. Okay? So it's the same idea. That center of gravity, that invisible ball at the bottom of your pelvis is always trying to align itself with the center of the earth. So even if I'm leaned over, even if I'm leaned back, even if I'm trying to lift something, even if I'm moving and walking, okay? This isn't an earth-shattering concept, but it's one that you're probably not paying attention to. Okay, think about how you walk. You don't even think about it. Nobody does, right? You're just walking along, you're taking your steps, you're doing this because you've been doing it since you were a toddler. You haven't thought about it in a long time. So part of Tai Chi is slowing things down so that we pay attention. That's why our Tai Chi walk is so important, okay? Because I'm just thinking of that little marble, okay? I'm holding that little, I can even put my hands out like this, okay? I can even put a marble in each hand if I want to, okay? But again, that movement is always heading towards the center of the earth, okay? If you can tune into that, one of the best ways to tune into that is to close your eyes. And a lot of people get nervous about that. They freak out that they're going to fall. But here I am. I'm in a controlled space. I'm pretty safe, so I don't really have to worry about that. I'm not doing this out playing in traffic or anything like that. So, you know, use your best judgment. But again, the minute I close my eyes, I don't have the visual cues to orient myself. Okay, my inner ear kicks in, all right, because I've lost a sense, and the other senses are trying to come online, okay, and I'm getting this proprioceptive sense. I'm getting all these sort of signals from outside of myself that are telling me all these inputs. And if I close my eyes and I sink, I can really feel that gravity, okay. And again, I want to think about an umbrella. I want to think of everything dripping down. What's left? That skeletal structure is left, okay? If the flesh melts away, if the muscle and the tissue fade away or melt into the ground, I'm left with this bone structure. And we're back to that lesson that I had about bones high, meat low, okay? I hate that phrase because it sounds so vulgar. Bones high, flesh low, either way it doesn't sound great. But the concept is pretty profound, right? If I'm standing like this, okay, I imagine this sort of hanging down, right? This flesh sort of hanging down off my bones, okay? And you can feel that. You should be able to feel that, okay? The bones are emerging. The bones are rising, okay? They're what's left, and what's hanging off of them is this sort of meat or flesh. The best example of this is, so this is an exercise band. I didn't want to do anything with these guys because I didn't know if anyone had them at home. I don't want to do stuff that no one has access to. So that's why a lot of what we've been doing is just empty hand, to show you that you can do Tai Chi anywhere, and to show you that you don't need a lot of fancy equipment, okay? But I happen to have these. You can use a t-shirt, you can use a towel, you can use whatever. But here I am, okay? I'm in this position like this. Notice how this just hangs off, okay? There's nothing to it, okay? There's no substance to it. There's no filler to it, all right? It's just hanging off, okay? And I can put this thing anywhere, okay? Just to get that sense of things hanging off the side, okay? I can even do on the shoulder like this, okay? See my Miss America sash, right? Okay, or off my waist, okay? Just to get that sense, right, of whatever is not held up is going to sink down, okay? Again, we're back to that pendulum. Everything that happens is pointing us down into the earth and letting that gravity take over, okay? So when I'm in this position, okay, now things are more advanced. I have my arch, I have my dome, I have my other dome connected, I have a sphere, okay? I'm pointed directly to the ground, okay? And I have that sense of the flesh hanging off those bones and the bones emerging from the top, okay? So now this is no longer me just standing here like an idiot, right? This is now actually turning into a martial practice. This is turning into something that I can be mindful about. It's something I can return to and think about. Okay, is my flesh hanging off the bones? Am I starting to tense up a little bit? Am I starting to fatigue? Is my structure lopsided? Is my structure collapsing? Okay, these are all things that I can think about. Is my dome secure? All right, so the next thing I want to teach you guys, I think, is probably the most important concept. And we're going to devote many sessions to this going forward, because now you guys are in level 2. And level 2 means that, and again, level 2 is assuming that you've gone through all this other stuff and you've been following along, and that you have an interest in Tai Chi. You know, don't get up every morning and do this because there's nothing else to do. You know, this is like anything. You might hobble along for a little while, but eventually you'll lose interest. What's kept me going with Tai Chi, because it can be very boring, it can be very rote, and I tell my students this all the time. You know, when you've done Part the Wild Horse's Mane for the 800,000th time, it can get old. There's no way to jazz it up. You can listen to music, you can do it outside, but sooner or later you're going to hit a wall where you're like, Jesus, this is boring. And I think that's true of any exercise. Even something that you really enjoy, there'll come a point where it becomes a little boring and it becomes a little repetitive. And at which point, you know, this is when you sort of muscle through. That's really when the learning happens. You know, standing in this pose every morning for 20 minutes can be boring. But I always have stuff I can focus on. I'm not just out there being like, oh, wow, making a laundry list and, you know, thinking all the things I can do. I'm checking in with myself. Okay, how's my breathing? Am I breathing properly through my belly? Okay, do I feel that pelvic bowl tilting forward? Do I feel my thighs? Do I feel that gravity? Okay, do I feel that sense of flesh hanging off the bones? Okay, do I have that chin tucked in? Do I have that head upright? All these things that I can constantly check in with. People think of balance as a static thing. They think of it, boom, I'm balanced. But balance is actually a series of minute changes that happen all the time, in real time, in response to change. Okay? So if I suddenly stand on one leg, I'm not balanced in the sense that it's over. Okay? I can feel little twinges in my right leg. I can feel little twinges in my hip. Okay? I can feel my center sort of changing. I can feel all these ways in which my body is trying to compensate for the fact that I have taken my surface area and cut it in half. Okay? So there's always adjustments that are going on. Balance is not a static thing. It's a process. Okay? And this is true in life too. We're never balanced all at once. We become balanced through events. How? We experience stress and we find an equilibrium that is maintained no matter through the ups or downs. So one of the reasons I like Tai Chi, particularly for Parkinson's, is because it does so much work for the balance. And once you get these concepts, those changes are permanent. Now, I don't promise fancy things. I'm not promising cures or anything like that. I think that's dangerous science. However, I believe that I've experienced changes that are permanent. In other words, I could never, ever practice Tai Chi again a day in my life. But because of these concepts, I will fall less than a standard civilian, okay? Because I know these things. And that's why I'm teaching them. That's why, for me, everyone needs a motivation. Everyone needs a reason to stay doing this. For me, it's because I'm curious what my body can do. And I'm curious what's next. So I'm always looking to try and find that unity. For you, it might be your balance. It might be your exercise. It might be whatever it might be. But the balance changes are permanent. And hopefully today I can impart a concept to you that will help you really get that idea. All right, so that's going to be the next video. and we're going to go from there. I'm going to show you guys how to do a grounding exercise that's going to bring this whole thing together, and then we'll move on from our static tree pose. Okay, so stay tuned.